terms of, the investments that they raised at a global stage and the exits that we made. However, अब ये ज़रूर है कि, presently the times have become challenging, and we have seen, we might call them failures, but I personally think that we need to look at them not as failures, but as learning opportunities. And what is it that we, as a startup ecosystem, what can we learn? We are a very young entrepreneurial ecosystem, so making comparisons with, much mature ecosystems will not be a good idea. तो हम अगर पाकिस्तान के कॉन्टेक्स्ट में हम अपनी प्रॉब्लम्स और हम अपनी अपॉर्चुनिटीज को फोकस में लाएं, so I'm sure we will realize that there is a lot of work that we can do to transform the way, our startups are being formed, the way they are growing, and the way, inshallah, they will be making, their exits. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, madam. Thank you very much. And I hope that Dr. Saima would be able to get in touch with you, and wherever the support is required in terms of industry academia linkage, we could also be a part of that as well. So we'll just wait 2 to 3 minutes more, and then we'll officially start the proceeding. जी अस्सलाम वालेकुम डॉक्टर साहब, डॉक्टर लोधी साहब, कैसे हैं आप?
वालेकुम सर, आप ठीक हैं? तबीयत अच्छी है?
अल्हम्दुलिल्लाह सर, just wanted to check on your audio.
Yeah.
Okay, loud and clear, sir. Thank you. अस्सलाम वालेकुम डॉक्टर आदिल.
वालेकुम अस्सलाम, क्या हाल है? कैसे?
I'm good, sir. I'm audible to you, जी?
Yes.
Thank you.
जी, thank you.
Assalamu alaikum, Wajid sir. Am I audible to you?
Very much. Assalamu alaikum, everybody. कैसे हैं आप?
I'm good, sir. Thank you, sir. We'll start in just a minute or two, not more than that. Thank you. Good afternoon and assalamu alaikum everyone. On behalf of STPI and Center for Private Sector Engagement, I welcome you all today to a very important session, a policy dialogue that is being orchestrated by the National Network of Economic Think Tanks to talk on building a better, resilient Pakistan economy, a call to action. Before we start off today's proceeding, there are a few housekeeping rules for our esteemed speakers that I'd like to jot down. I'll request our speakers to keep their microphone off when they're not speaking to ensure good audio quality. Speakers are also encouraged to switch on their cameras, especially when they're speaking, if their network allows. Simultaneously, this session is being recorded and telecasted live on Facebook. You're able to join it later on, and the recording would also be available for everyone. For the audience, we'll be inviting questions at the end of the session, and you can also write your questions in the Q&A section. Our speakers will also look into them and respond accordingly. So with today, I'll start off today's session, and keeping in view, I'm very thankful to everyone who has accepted our invitation to be a part of it. We understand that the regulatory environment of Pakistan has been an important area of academic and policy research due to high level of uncertainty involved. The extensive importance and appetite in the academia and the policy circle, particularly for having a consultative process moving around this subject, is of critical importance. However, it has been noted and it has been found out that there exists a gap in literature in understanding the narrative around policy regulatory environment with various stakeholders, which includes the public sector, private sector, academia, and civil society organizations. So with this background, STPI, Center for Private Sector Engagement, in 2018 had established a national network of economic think tanks with members from all provinces, which includes members from the public sector, private sector, academia, industry, civil society organization, and media. In addition to having sectoral experts related to the field of business regulatory environment, Pakistan's National Network of Economic Think Tank had also launched its provincial chapter in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, which we had piloted for the last 2 years in 2021 and 2023, and we had been successful. So before starting off today's proceeding, there is a little presentation that I'd like to show it to you on the National Network of Economic Think Tanks, and as shared, for the network, when it was being formulated, next slide please. When it was being formulated, we ensured that the geographical and sectoral inclusivity was a part of it to ensure the diversity of the network. As shared, we have members from the public sector, from the private sector, from academia, media and civil society organization. What we aim to do particularly is to focus on research, advocacy, and capacity development around building a resilient Pakistan economy, particularly in terms of better business regulatory environment in Pakistan. So for that, we have been conducting activities which include research reports, public-private dialogues, and as highlighted in this slide, the outcome always has been on the evidence-based policy recommendations that can help in reforming the regulatory processes in Pakistan for the business community, for easier and less costly processes. So in the next slide, as shared, as you can see, as mentioned earlier, the members that we have are focused on the government side. We have from Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, Board of Investment, Revenue authorities, and from the think tanks, we're fortunate to have people from IBA, from Government College University, Lahore. We have provincial HEC universities as a part of it. Civil society is also an integral part, private sector, which includes the Chamber of Commerces and private entities who are working on entrepreneurial ecosystem in Pakistan are also a part of it. So what is the expectation that we have from our members. If we talk about the government members, we seek guidance from them on strategic directions for research relevant to the different subject that could be of better business regulatory environment. It could be of providing updates on the regulation and the government initiatives. We have been fortunate. I just wanted to add over here that the network had been working rigorously for the last 5 years on with the Federal Board of Revenue in tax harmonization initiative. We were fortunate to be a part of the FBR's digital cross-border trade platform, that is Pakistan Single Window initiatives. Simultaneously, PRMI, that was consultatively made with the support from SDPI. So this network has been working rigorously with the government members. From the academia and private sector, it's always has been the way we have been trying to orchestrate and bring on the policy papers that are shared with the network members across the board to ensure effectiveness. Simultaneously, media and civil society has always been supportive to SDPI's network as being an integral part of it to guide in terms of advocacy and communication strategies for providing and sharing the relevant policy messages to the relevant stakeholders. So what we basically are expecting from this network for the last 5 years and for the upcoming years is to provide homegrown economic solutions for the government of Pakistan, particularly for the incoming government. So with this background in mind, we'll start off today's moderated discussion. And for this, I'll request Dr. Adil Nakhuda to share his thoughts on the current macroeconomic condition in Pakistan, particularly in terms of the IMF review that is upcoming.
Okay, thank you, Abdullah. Yeah, thank you. Sorry. So thank you, SDPI, for giving me this opportunity to talk here. So I was asked to discuss some of this related to the IMF program that we had. Right. So in July, we had signed this IMF program, which was basically on 4 points. One was on debt sustainability. The other was on market determined exchange rate. The other point was basically energy sector viability. And the third was the tightening of monetary policy. So those were the 4 points the previous, I guess, the government agreed on when they went for the IMF program, which basically gave us this loan for this cushion for 9 months. While we have this transition period from one government to another. So the idea was basically to ensure that there is enough reserves, so the reserves don't really collapse. So you're getting the $3 billion in that time period, and then you have your market determined exchange rate, which has now become very controversial, right? That we had that increase in the dollar rate, which went up to like about 330 in the open market, 306 in the interbank, and now has come down to around 290, right? So there's that idea that there has to be a lot of control in this. So they are trying to, well, there is this whole issue of this being smuggled, right, to Afghanistan, which was dealt with this administrative controls by reducing cross-border trade with Afghanistan, etc. Then there is this whole monetary policy where the idea is basically to increase the interest rate and ensure that inflation is in control. I think the latest figures, again, seeing that inflation is likely to rebound. I was told that's about 38% or something like that, from 28%, the inflation rate is likely to go up again. So there is this whole chance that there may be some realignment there with the monetary policy. And then we see the energy sector viability, where we are looking at the circular debt being taken care of by increasing the rates and the capacity payments being made. So I think those were the 4 points that Pakistan needs to look into during this transition period. And guess that's where the adjustments are going to come in the next 3 to 6 months that we have before we get into the new government phase or when the new government is elected. So I guess with that, the macroeconomic policies could be determined by these 4 points in that the short-term time frame that we have, right? And then the other ones naturally are at longer horizon, which we basically talk about exports, which I'm going to talk about later in this webinar. So over to you here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Adil, for your kind remarks and for sharing the overview of the current economic condition and priorities in Pakistan. I'll move to Dr. Abdul Salam Lodi, who's a professor of economics at BUTMS, Balochistan, to shed light and share his ideas on the key structural reforms that are needed for long-term growth, potential and resilience to improve the economic situation in Pakistan. Over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Adil. If it's okay, I close my video because of poor connection.
It's fine, sir. We can hear you.
Okay, thank you. I hope I'm audible.
Loud and clear.
Yeah, thank you. Assalamu alaikum and good evening, everybody. First of all, I'm thankful to SDPI for giving us this opportunity of talking on this important issue. I think it's need of the time to reframe our policy based on the growth potentials of our economy and natural resource endowments. Coming to your questions, I can split these questions into two parts. First, on the growth potentials of our economy, and second is based on the reforms in the short run and the long run, which are needed to our economy. While talking on the first part, I will quote Charter of Economy given by Quaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah. If we conclude in a nutshell is all sayings about our economy, according to his vision, Pakistan should be an industrial country with 100% self-sufficiency in agriculture. So when one say to self-sufficiency in agriculture, it's why and when one economy should focus on self-sufficiency in agriculture, it's because of our natural resource endowment. If we analyze our agriculture resources, they have huge potential to improve our economy. And above all, I'm happy to explore this. There are more than 10 agroecological zones where we can grow and produce a large range of agricultural commodities. Therefore, we can develop a sustainable agriculture production system at region, national, and global scale. This is possible with scientific improvement in agriculture practices that ensures efficient utilization of available resources. Mostly in the case of Balochistan, we always suggest high value and low delta crops because these are more beneficial for this region. On the other end, if we analyze our potentials of manufacturing and industrial sector, it has also a huge potential to excel. But unfortunately, we fail to provide an inhabitable environment to our industrial sector. Whenever in the country, the environment for production is good to industrial sector, our manufacturing sector has shown positive results. So one can say that the economy of Pakistan is a best example of the two-sector economy, where agriculture and industry can support each other. And agriculture sector could contribute to growth and further structural transformation of the economy. So instead of this much potentials, the question is why we fail to achieve tangible results. I think it's because of mismanagement and poor governance. So here I will discuss the second part of the question, like what are the short-run and long-run policy requirements. Because of the shortage of time, I will explain these in bullets. First, we need to improve the governance. Good governance is needed for price control, for hoarding control, for illegal transaction of money transaction, and we should stop this unjustified subsidies. And there is a need for improvement in our fiscal policy side, like reduction in unnecessary expenditures. And I think now it's time we should go for increase our tax net. instead of increasing the tax rate, we should think that how we can bring more and more people into that net. And there should be a justification in this energy prices and transparency in collection of these prices. And in the monetary policy, I think this inflation targeting policy is creating problems in our economy. There should be a gradual reduction in the interest rate demand side. It is supply side inflation. So we should rethink of this interest rate increase. We cannot decrease it at once, but gradually, I think we should check it. And in the long run, we need transformation in our agriculture policy. We need improvement process in human capital formation, and we need very good educational institutions where we should able to export human capital. And in the long run, we should think on this cheap and efficient energy resources. I think we cannot afford this like high cost energy prices. So in the first session, this is all from my side. If there's any other question, I will be. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Saab, very much for highlighting the needs that are required for the current economic setup that we have, and how can we further improve the governance structure in Pakistan. Moving forward, I'll request Dr. Saima Sarwar, Chairperson, Department of Entrepreneurship, Government College, University Lahore, to highlight the issues, challenges, and opportunities for building economic resilience in the current economic situation in context of gender equality and women's empowerment.
Thank you. First of all, I would like to thank STPI for giving me this opportunity to share my thoughts on this very important question. When Pakistan is facing lots of diversity in its problems, somewhere we are facing financial issues, somewhere we are facing climatic problems, and that is all accumulating towards such kind of situation where our resources are not meeting up our needs. Here, first of all, I would like to highlight the challenges faced by women and women especially in such a phase of or in such scenario where Pakistan is facing these kind of issues. Unfortunately, we see that Pakistan comes at the second worst status when we discuss the gender parity in terms of women vis-a-vis men. Why this is so? This is all our cultural norms which are not letting our women to participate properly into their economic positions. Equal opportunity, equal access to economic opportunity is one of the most important issue, which is not letting women to penetrate into the economic and political system. That's why this most wider section or segment of our society is not acting as resilient to the economy. As per the perception of recent world experts, if women is more empowered, then it means the society is going to be more diverse, inclusive, and resilient into its system. So in our case, in case of developing countries, and mostly in case of South Asian and Pakistan's economy, we see the less participation on the side of the women. Only SMEs are the is a sector where women is participating informally most of the time. This is also one of the dilemma that almost 81% of the informal sector is attached to the women. And that's why they're not having those kind of works, which are literate women, which are women working under the urban setup is gaining out of their former employments. Why this is so, and that's why this huge segment is not resilient towards these kind of economic and political disasters. And there is need to help them out from these kind of status where they are empowered, they are earning money, but they are not progressing at the same pace at which the urban women or the women employed in formal sector is moving on. Government has taken many steps in this regard, but policies are there and they are not working in that way in which they should actually. The most important issue we are facing is the cultural poverty. This cultural poverty is actually limiting the individual agency of the women, and that's why, being the largest segment of the society, we are not actually incorporating these kind of values into our delivery system, into our delivery system of the politically or economically overall Pakistan. So there is need to build such a framework where we can produce with our minimum resources using our maximum capacities. There is also need that we should go for the proper supportive legislation or legal reforms on the side of the women participation, role of women in Pakistan. This is most, you can say, restricting element, which is not letting our women to be resilient towards this side. Pro-women legislation is one of the most important factor on which the government should focus on. Lack of education and skills is also one of the most important restriction upon the women that is actually not letting them to operate in this situation. So, in my perspective, the government should focus on these kind of issues where not only finance is to be made accessible to the women for working or for enhancing their capacities in terms of business environment, but also on these kind of social and cultural values which are very much which are creating very much trouble for them in participating overall in economic setup. So this is from my side, that how a woman can be resilient towards this kind of scenario, and they can produce much better if the government is going to help them out in these grounds.
Thank you very much, madam, for highlighting the importance of creating a supportive business environment for women to ensure that they are able to participate and contribute toward the formal economy of Pakistan. I'll move towards Dr. Adil Nakhuda to share his thoughts on the key priorities should be addressed in the Charter of Economy in order to build economic resilience, and also to reflect on the Pakistan diversification in terms of export base and reduction to reliance.
Okay, thank you. Thank you again, SDPI, for inviting me once again. Well, to answer like the question on the diversification part, right, of the export base, we need to first determine the extent of the lack of diversification in Pakistan's export base. So the question is, why diversify, right? So first, the level of diversification in exports of a country is likely to be based on several factors that can influence the composition of the export bundle. Certain countries are abundant with natural resources, may report large exports, but can be less diversified in terms of their composition of their export basket, which you see in the Middle Eastern oil-rich countries. While other countries may be less diversified due to their geographical location, landlocked, or poor access to trade routes, or due to the smaller population size, which likely reduces the capabilities to not only engage in manufacturing activities, but limits the ability to produce a greater range of products, which you see with a lot of smaller African countries. So they may not have the ability to generate the mass of entrepreneurs needed to broaden the production base. Now, Pakistan, with a population of about 250 million, is neither natural resource abundant nor is it constrained by its geography. The large population with complementary investments in capabilities and innovation can provide much needed impetus to the economy. Second, a country may have lower levels of diversification, but may focus their production in relatively sophisticated or complex goods that can fetch higher export value. So for instance, approximately 50% of Vietnam's exports are machinery and electrical appliances. Machinery and electrical appliances are the most traded products after oil. These products have significant potential for growth, as can be seen in becoming an export powerhouse in the last few years. However, when considering Pakistan's export, we find that is not only concentrated with 60% of the products exported belonging to the textile sector. The products themselves report low value addition and have limited potential in their growth. So textile reported total trade value of less than 1 trillion in 2022, while approximately 6 trillion worth of electrical appliances and machinery was traded last year. Other industries such as the pharmaceutical industry, plastics, petrochemical are all larger than the total textile exports, right? So the topmost traded HS chapter for textile product, HS 61, which is articles of apparel and clothing, does not even rank amongst the top 10 HS chapters traded globally. Therefore, it is essential that Pakistan diversifies the product range, as the scope of textile products itself is quite limited. However, I want to bring an important point here that if Pakistan exports higher value products that generate greater value addition within the textile industry, instead of the low value added cotton-based products that we export, it can add value and that can actually help. So diversification can actually even happen within an industry if we move towards higher value products. So now let me bring some points up. So in order to diversify the export basket, it is essential that a large number of producers are encouraged to not only produce more goods, but also participate in international trading activities. So the role of agglomeration and knowledge transfers across entrepreneurs and businesses can help increasing trade activity. So this actually, if you look at the agriculture and industry linkages, we can see that this is there. So first, it is essential to increase the capabilities of businesses to participate in international trading activities. The capability to produce more goods and participate in international trading activities should entail building technical capacities of firms that can make them more efficient producers. This requires ensuring that producers have the right set of information necessary to export their products. This will allow them to invest in right mix of products targeting the appropriate markets. Second, it is essential to ensure better trade facilitation by developing the trade-related infrastructure. So the World Bank Enterprise Survey finds that Pakistani firms face greater obstacles in both transport and customs. It is costly for Pakistani firms to trade. However, it is important to mention that Pakistan has made strides in digitalization of trade processes and procedures by introducing the Pakistan Single Window Platform, which can tremendously aid export growth. It is imperative that Pakistan also undertakes measures to make trading across borders easier, as well as by signing respective agreements with major trading partners. So introduction of paperless cross-border trade processes can provide such opportunities to reduce trade costs. Trade policies must include provisions for smaller and medium enterprises, ensuring that the participation in production is increased. Unfortunately, the beneficiaries of several policies are large-sized businesses, as policies involve subsidies, trade protection, and financial incentives that are catered towards the more successful and more developed businesses. The role of SMEDA is crucial in ensuring that smaller businesses and businesses targeting niche markets participate in international trading activities. Now, let me come to this question on the Charter of Economy. So continuing with the second question and I'll focus with my field of expertise here, which is international trade. So one of the reasons why Pakistan lacks exports is that it struggles in terms of its level of export competitiveness. As highlighted earlier, the export basket is quite limited in terms of the product range, and there's little diversification in exports, and exports lack complexity with little value addition taking place in the country. A charter on the economy of Pakistan will likely consist of topics on reviving export growth to build that resilience. However, export growth must be made sustainable, and that will only occur if the exporters are regionally and globally competitive. This is unlikely to be achieved with inward-looking policies that protect inefficiencies in the economy. Exporters must be able to sell their goods at competitive prices and cater to the ever-evolving needs of foreign consumers. This will require the need to boost their productivity levels, as exporters not only compete on cost, but also on quality, particularly when consumers are seeking competitively priced, better quality goods. The lack of competition in the market not only has made essential goods more expensive, but also reduced the number of varieties for each product available in the market. The government must ensure that it facilitates trade so that exporters face not only lower trade costs, but also low cost and regulatory compliance, as well as minimal delays at the border. It is critical to ensure that the exporters have access to the required set of information on trade-related rules, regulations, and changes in policy landscape that is disseminated to them in a timely manner. The provisions on government facilitation must ensure that there is no discrimination against smaller businesses, which is usually the case when financial support packages and tax relief incentives are devised to boost short-term gains rather than long-term gains. The purpose should be to eliminate barriers that could limit the creation of a larger mass of exporters needed to not only increase exports, but also diversify the export basket. So, okay, with that, I'll end my talk. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Adil, for highlighting the need, how we can contribute towards the economy of Pakistan. I believe that the idea that you have shared and the things that you have highlighted in terms of Pakistan single window, no doubt is playing a pivotal role in reducing the regulatory burden for the traders and the producers as well. Moving forward, Mr. Fahad Sheikh Saab, who is the co-founder of the Pakistan Freelancer Association. I would request if you could highlight how freelancer associations can address the economic challenge while working with the government and other stakeholders. Simultaneously, what specific policy and program support is required by the freelancers when it comes to inclusive ecosystem, economic ecosystem for freelancers in Pakistan?
First of all, thank you, Abdullah, for inviting us to this panel. Your first question is how can we do policy interventions to ensure economic stability when it comes to freelancers? So I'll take it a step back and I'll talk about technology. How can we leverage technology for economic stability? Now, in terms of exports, if you see that number, freelancers contribute almost roughly, the actual figure is roughly around $300 to $500 million per year. And, it was very rightly pointed by a panelist here that there are 4 things that we need to work on when it comes to international trade. And that is capability, capacity, ease of doing business, and global competitiveness, right? These are the 4 things that we have to work on. Now, when it comes to capability, what do I mean? In terms of capability, when people want to work or contribute in this specific sector, it's a very high skilled niche. So we need to focus on talent, how to create that talent that can compete in a global world, right? When it comes to capacity, those who are already competing, they undersell. That is a very big problem for us. So how do we take them to the next level? Third is ease of doing business. Now, ease of doing business is a big thing for everyone working in technology, and that includes taxes, that includes financial inclusion, that includes communication. All of these things are a part of it, and then comes market competitiveness and the ability to compete in a global world. And for that, for one thing that although all 3 of these things do contribute, but we have to work on an ethical and moral compass here. We do see that in terms of contracts, in terms of all of these things become a very big problem for individuals specifically trying to compete in a global market. Now, how are we trying to solve this, and what can be done in the future in terms of policy? So what our focus is, first and foremost, creating an enabling environment. Those who want to get into this field and those who are already are a part of this field, i.e. freelancers, independents, gig economy, platform economy, everyone who's a part of this specific economy. So what we try to do is we create an enabling environment for them in all of it around these 4 points. We help them if they're facing any issue in payments, financial inclusion. For example, if it was a very big problem for freelancers opening a bank account, it was a very big problem for them to get loans, insurances. They weren't a part of a formal financial economy. So we did a lot of stuff with the State Bank and the Ministry of Finance, and we did a lot of work around that. But a lot still needs to be done. Ease of doing business is a very big part of it, and it's still very difficult for an individual to do work from Pakistan and do work internationally. So summing this entire conversation, these 4 points, the 4 points that I've mentioned, all policy should be around these 4 points. Getting the workforce ready and providing them with all the tools and services they need to compete in a global world. And now we've recently seen a lot of steps being taken by the Ministry of IT. There've been announcement that we're trying to bring in PayPal in Pakistan. There've been announcement that we're trying to bring Stripe in Pakistan. There was an announcement of a co-working space. These are excellent steps that enable the workforce around all of these 4 points, right? Capacity and capability is established through a working space, and ease of doing business and market competitiveness are through Stripe and PayPal, right? So steps like these, which create an enabling environment for the workforce, should be part of the policy. Thank you.
Thank you, Fahad. Thank you very much for highlighting that ease of doing the business solely depends upon the ease of regulatory processes that should be ensured by the government. And this is where this network comes in, and all the members could play a pivotal role in orchestrating and providing with relevant policy recommendations that could be forwarded to the relevant authorities. And we must applaud the work that the work being carried out by Pakistan Freelance Association. We'll move to Ms. Quratul, Chief Executive Officer of AIN Consulting Private Limited, and also an integral part of Sarhad Chamber of Commerce. Madam, I'll request if you could highlight what are the key regulatory challenges being faced by the businesses in the current economic scenario, and how the economic environment be improved to support women businesses in Pakistan. Over to you, Madam.
And everyone. Thank you for trusting me and ask me to share my views, which are mostly a little bit straightforward and harsh, but please bear with me as usual. First, we need to see that what are the reasons and causes which is causing all these economic conditions in our country. Apart from global effect of inflation and changing the scenario over there, regulatory reforms and other things, we are actually facing all these things because of roughly 23 years of instability in our country. That is direct effect of the war in our country. And because of that, we are facing all these things. Now, the regulations are actually made to safeguard the interest of the public, the market, the business owners, and the population. But the biggest issue we are seeing right now currently is the lack of trust on the regulators, on the governance system. And sorry, I'm putting my camera off. Okay. Fine. Uncertainty on the political and market things, that's from the business sector. Like, if they want to invest an amount, they don't see anything, any environment for the safeguard of their investment within the country. And the people who are outside the country, they are also very much, you can say that, scared that there is no way, there is no regulation, and there are a lot of restrictions for movement of the amount for the currency coming out and inside the country. Another thing which is lately we have noticed in the meetings with the ambassadors and different commercial attaches of the other countries, we got to know that there is a lot of lack of trust on part of that thing, that if people in Pakistan, they are not able to make the payments, delay of the payments, and all those things, like, which is stopping. Even there is a hesitation on the part of their governments to take the initiative in that role, that they can say that, oh, okay, we can build the long-term relationships, or we can come in and let you guys build the relationships. Second thing, the regulations are still very technical, and they are complex. They are not easy to navigate for a person. Like, they always have to go to the regulators and their staff, which are we all know that the government bodies are always overstaffed. So they have to go there and they have to do all the things through them. Because of this reason, they always come up with another issue always when a person, for example, recently a person came and he tried to do the exports, and it took him like 6 months to just go through his documentation and processes, but he was not able to make it, and finally he decided to not root and work and do the exports from Pakistan, and he chose the other path. Then there is another thing that we have a high cost of production. That is also a result of our negligible and incompetent decisions. And if I keep on going, then we don't have this phenomena of free markets. The world is moving towards the free market in terms of like, not in terms of the currency, in terms of the products and all those things, but Pakistan is lacking in it. And there is a lot of control on this thing. And because of increasing of all these restrictions, the competition is actually decreasing, and the Competition Commission of Pakistan is nowhere being in the position, in the picture, to making any changes so that they can have the healthy competition. So the monopoly is also increasing. Whenever you pick up a product line, and you will see that there is a company which is behind like 25 to 30 products of the same category. So there you lose the regularity hold of the what you say, that the quality of the products, that's also gone. When you don't have the quality of products within the country, you are not able to export them as well with the same quality, and obviously we lack in the other thing. Dr. Adil and Fahad have actually highlighted a lot of things over the quality of the export and ease of doing business. But there is another thing as well, which is very important. In the current scenario, we are one of the countries which has a large number of population. But this population is actually the market, is the end consumer as well. But we are not focusing on that thing. We are totally focusing on exports and all those things, and totally leaving behind the local buyers which have the capacity to buy on the imports. They are still importing. They are getting the thing from outside the country because there is no quality product inside the country, and mainly because of 3 reasons. They have restriction on the resource mobilization, resource utilization, resource, you can say, extraction, because first, they don't have the expertise, maybe. Second, restrictions, and third, they don't have the technology for doing that as well. So these are just a few of the challenges which are being faced by the businessmen right now, and they are actually too much in trouble because of the power, high interest rate, the money is not flowing now, the investments are not secured, and actually the business are moving their business toward, they're happily moving their business to Afghanistan, Malaysia, to the other nearby countries. But Pakistan is not seeing any growth in despite of opening a lot of new economic zones, industrial zones, technology zones. There are the issues, these are the challenges. They're the solution, but we can start the solution with one point. There can be a lot of things that definitely we have to do a lot of things, but we have to start it with the right man for the right job. When the person sitting over there is not competent enough, is not trained enough, is not skilled enough, then that is the issue. And that is the reason there is a lot of resilience in the adoption of the e-governance as well. There are a lot of places where we can have the short-term technological adoptions. For example, just 2 days before I came across the discussion in the new system which is being organized in the KB for things like, for example, when you go to the tax IRS system, you will be able to have a lot of all the things which you have bought or your tax has already been deducted. You will be shown it at one place, and when you are making your returns, you will be able to reconcile, ask, and that is very helpful thing. But how will you convince the people to attach everything with your CNIC so they will be able to do that? Okay, fine.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry for interrupting. I do understand because of the limitation of time, I had to intervene. Your recommendations and the issues that you're highlighting, we are noting them down, and we'll be taking them forward to the relevant authorities. Thank you very much. Moving forward, I'll request Sayyid Wajid Iqbal Bukhari Sahab, who is the Chief Executive Officer of Pakistan Association of Large Steel Producers, to shed light on the avenues for public-private partnership in the current economic situation. How can we improve the business climate of Pakistan, simultaneously improving infrastructure and reducing energy cost? Also, sir, if you could guide the network on the private sector investment in human capital development to create a more productive workforce.
Thank you very
Over to
much, Abdullah Khalid Saab, for giving me this opportunity to speak at the end of the sort of discussion. I would like to focus from steel industry's point of view. I would say Pakistan is never short of good policies. It's only the implementation where we have failed so far, and also coupled with the inconsistency in policies. If one government makes one policy, there another government comes, they start anew. So if Pakistan has to be serious with its affairs, I would say we'll have to go into a catch-up mode, because even regionally, we are lagging behind countries like Vietnam, Bangladesh. They have started, I mean, already they are far ahead Pakistan. So we'll have to take every possible measure to take our country forward. You have spoken about public-private partnership and also about the regulatory and the infrastructure improvement. As far as the regulatory environment in Pakistan is concerned, I would say that it needs the quality of the regulators who are I mean, who have to play a very key role in taking the industry forward. There is urgent need to improve their quality. In most of the cases, I mean, their performance is far below what is the required level. At a scale of 1 to 100, I mean, some of them are at maybe 10, some are at 20, some are 30, and some are at 0. So, number one, we have to improve the quality of the regulators, and the one thing which is most important is meritocracy. The appointments in these regulatory bodies must be on merit, and we need to have the best of the best minds, because I mean, we have to catch up with the world. We are, I mean, despite huge potential in this country, we are lagging behind. So we have to I mean, meritocracy is one thing that we have to ensure, and secondly, what I would like to say is that in Pakistan, there are, I mean, one of the panelists talked about there must not be no discrimination with the smaller sectors. My understanding is that Pakistan has two type of sectors, two type of, I mean, one is where there is no, I mean, they do not get any support from the government, and there are sectors, I mean, there are 5, 6, 7, 10 sectors which get maximum importance, and they get maximum subsidies and all the preferences from the government, and the remaining, they are ignored. So if we have to, I mean, improve the overall industry and our output, we'll have to give equal importance to the remaining sectors. So these are some of the suggestions that I would like to, I mean, make.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much for highlighting that the capacity enhancement of the regulators is much required. Simultaneously, when it comes to human development, we have to look into the best practices that are being catered by internationally by other partners in the South Asian region and also in the West as well. Thank you. We'll move toward to Ms. Sumaira Abbasi, Executive Director, TIE Islamabad. Madam, thank you very much for bearing with us, and I'll request if you could highlight how private sector can promote financial inclusion and access to credit for entrepreneurs and startups. Simultaneously, how the supply side factors like rising cost of capital, energy crisis, and supply chain disruption are impacting the entrepreneurial ecosystem. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Abdullah. First of all, of course, as mentioned earlier, I'm really thankful for being given the opportunity to, speak at this panel and at this policy dialogue. So with regards to the first question that you asked as to how the private sector can sort of mobilize, the funds that startups need for, to be set up, and of course, once they're set up, to push their growth. We, of course, we know the important role that the microfinancing institutions can play, and we've recently seen a great, surge in the digital financial services, different, payment gateways, financial payment platforms have, come forward from the private sector itself. But we also know that these sort of provisioning, this kind of provisioning is predominantly available for the urban sectors. But this is where we need to take into consideration when we want financial inclusion. How are we going to cater to the micro entrepreneurs or the small businesses that are in far-flung areas, and they do not sort of have access to these kind of services. So one of the things, of course, that has helped is creating such smaller funds have gone on. We've seen very good examples from the private sector. Akhuwat is a great example, and we can definitely replicate those kind of examples more and more. More recently, we've seen a very active growth of the venture capital funds in Pakistan, and also a lot of them are also angel funds as well. The good thing is that despite the challenges that the Pakistani startup ecosystem has, the outlook of investors, not just local but also from other parts of the world, from global investors, has been still positive. We recently at TIE hosted at the We Create Center, we hosted the Chief Operating Officer of 500 Global, Courtney Powell. And one of the key things that we learned with her from the discussion from her was that their outlook in emerging countries, particularly countries like Pakistan, remains positive. And again, I think this is owing to the factors that we've already sort of, my fellow panelists have spoken about in their, conversation, of the immense amount of talent that we see in the young people today, their ability to capitalize and leverage on the technology that is available to them. And most importantly, I think the resilience that we have seen, the determination, and I think the fact that our startups are able to survive in such harsh political and economical conditions is a great, it is a great indicator of, success which the investors are willing to bet on. So I think with that emergence of more and more investor interest, I think there, while we may see not a lot of investments happening, but the positive or the light at the end of the tunnel is that the outlook remains positive. What we need to do is encourage more, high net individuals, or more, more platforms or private sector companies to sort of, start investing in those startups and providing them with those financing opportunities. We all understand that within Pakistan, one of the greatest challenges that most investments are sort of locked and blocked into real estate. So creating investor education programs, which which give that kind of awareness, and it also sort of educates investors into the path to creating the parts to sort of embark on a more educated investor journey. So even with TiE, we are really looking forward to creating more investor education programs, and I think that's one of the key roles that private sector entities need to focus on. And more than that, when we are talking not just about bigger organizations or corporates or high net worth individuals, we also need that trickle down effect where we are creating more financial literacy programs for the masses, so that people also learn that they can sort of what is going to be a safe and more calculated way to invest in startups, instead of locking their investments into just the traditional real estate, for instance, that we have seen, which has obviously not helped drive the economy. And other than that, also, of course, looking at some alternative funding, financing opportunities, for instance, instead of I recently attended a very interesting discussion which was organized by CARE International, and one of the insights that surfaced was that we see a lot of programs by the State Bank itself, or initiatives by the State Bank, or banks, microfinance banks that are offering financing options. But the problem is that people or startups or small businesses from unprivileged areas or far-flung areas, they do not know how to apply and how to meet the documentation requirements to access those loans or those fundings. So again, I think that this facilitation is again required by organizations that are working in this space, such as ourselves, of course, to design such kind of programs where startups can be helped in creating their financial plans and creating documentation that is then acceptable by the lending authorities that are there to provide those kind of financing for these startups. In response to, sorry, I'm just going to quickly answer the second question, and I understand that we are, running short of time, so I will very quickly answer the second question. I think most of the conversations from my panelists, they've spoken about this already and have already sort of answered my questions in how, the rising costs of capital and energy crisis and all of these have impacted startups, and we all are aware of that. I think what needs to be done is helping startups think out of the box, create efficient and optimum systems and processes that will help lower costs, and looking into also what kind of resources can be accessed in such difficult times. And I'm going to sort of wrap up here, because I do understand that we are on a time constraint here, and thank you so much for allowing me to express my views.
Thank you. Thank you very much for highlighting the initiatives being considered at this moment, particularly the investment education program that's more related to the financial literacy for the masses. But keeping in view that we have observed that majority of the startups or the small enterprises which exist in the second and the third tier cities are not able to access the proper platforms. On the contrary, it has also been observed that they don't have the proper education when it comes to applying for a loan, for example. Simultaneously, majority of the startups or the enterprises in the urban vicinity are able to get that information properly, but when it comes to Haripur, Ahmedabad, people living over there, particularly those startups over there, are unable to come up with these schemes or the work that is being provided by the state bank or other entities as well. Moving forward, keeping in view the limitation of time, I'll request Engineer Ahad Nazir Saab, who is heading the Center for Private Sector Engagement at STPI, to highlight the work that has been taken into consideration by the National Network of Economic Think Tanks overall for the last 5 years. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone, for joining. I think as a very early level student of economics and public policy, I'm certainly educated. Just to give people an introduction of this network, we formulated this network back in 2018. This network has a overall national level presence, but our focus mainly for the last 1.5-2 years has mostly been on KP. But we are now getting back at the national domain, and probably Ma'am Kuratulain is the most consistent member of the group, and she will acknowledge that the quality of discussion in the meetings has gradually been going in a positive way, and the main focus that I have always tried to keep while conducting these meetings or being part of these meetings is that we need to keep a very solution-oriented approach, and thankfully all of us had that solution-oriented approach. So just if I can be given two minutes to just put everything sort of into perspective. So what resilience means is that we need to have a system that will have a defined sort of effect to a shock that we give to it. Unfortunately, the system is giving different effects to the same causes due to probably the structural damage it has seen over more than 70 years. So the problem mainly, as I see it, is the lack of institutional memory, both at the public sector as well as other stakeholders and as well. A lot of things have been done in the past, and we are trying to redo them. A lot of reform were just conducted for the sake of a very short level thinking of a revolution, but they were not there. Like for instance, Dr. Ishrat's article that talks about putting our own house in order was never considered truthfully. This has caused a loss of confidence for all of us as citizens, as businesses, as customers, as investors. We have lost that, and that is why the sort of thinking behind regulation is always a negative thought. We never think of regulation as being a positive thing, as is in many other countries, because we don't seem to get the same benefit instead of the cost that we are spending on it. Another thing that we have discussed with the government as well is the use of data for policy making. But unfortunately, due to this lack of policy consistency, lack of institutional memory, somehow that data has been more used for harassment of the private sector rather than anything positive coming out of it. The third most important aspect is probably the non-productive usage of resources. I think Dr. Saima Sarwar also hinted upon that women make up more than 50% of our population, and their participation in the workforce is still too less due to cultural and other factors. But I think there are ways in which we can counter those cultural barriers and still keep them in the workforce. And of course, the digital economy, freelancing that Fahad Saab discussed comes into account there. Another aspect, energy. We spend 55% of our energy on households. That is a non-productive sector. So this again is a thing that I think people of public policy, of economics need to really think about, that how we should manage our demand. If we want to become an industry-driven country, then we need to appropriately align ourselves to that. And lastly, I think we should focus on the digital sector. ICT has a huge potential, not only in terms of freelancing, but also in terms of exports. But again, the risks that are there are that we might not be fully skilled for that. Our skills need to be updated as we go forward. I remember a report by Pasha that says that a student coming out of a Pakistani university needs to spend at least 9 months at an office to fully become productive. So this is very important. I think where the sort of industry academia linkage becomes a very important aspect. And similarly, I think the sort of change management we need from being in an agriculture economy to now a services economy, and especially when we're talking about digital services, I think that change management needs to be very quickly employed. The FBR, the other regulators need to now understand that they cannot count services the same way as they were doing goods. So these are the sort of reforms I think that we should be looking forward to. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Atab. Keeping in view the time, and I think we have a question from Wajid Saab.
Gee, thank you very much. Just a last comment, I would say the shortest, measure, the easiest measure that the government of Pakistan need to take is to have the best minds as the key positions. Whether it's finance minister, it is Secretary Finance, it is State Bank of Pakistan, it's Secretary Industries, it's Secretary Commerce, it's Minister for Commerce, and give them authority. I mean, just these few key positions, get the top of the line minds, and then for the regulators also. Be it State Bank of Pakistan, I'm not saying they are not competent who are there right now, but we need to have the best of the best minds. And this is the easiest thing within that can be done within the shortest possible time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Saima.
One more point. In the end, I would like to mention that if we want to make Pakistan a resilient state, keeping in view the gender mainstreaming or doing the gender mainstreaming of the policies, we have to move towards the better legislation for women. So this is the only way that the role of women can be added into the process towards development. And pro-women legislation, no doubt, is on way, but implementation is not there. That's why harassment, networking, these are the two important factors which are reducing the capacity of the women, which are trying to give their best, both in formal and informal sector. This is also one of the most important, I must say, a suggestion. If we want to make our state resilient towards economic shocks, keeping in view the gender role collectively in economic side, or you can say on economic front. So this is something which is to be done on faster mode if we want to implement the policies the right way.
Thank you very much. Moving towards, I'll be requesting Dr. Waqar Ahmed, Joint Executive Director, for his closing remarks.
Thank you, Abdullah, and thank you to all the network partners for their participation.
Really grateful to all of them for joining at, I must say, a rather short notice, given that we're all gearing up to, of course, put forward collective ideas and collective wisdom for the new setup that, of course, holds the economic sort of thinking, or puts economic instruments into motion. And certainly this is one of the objectives of the network, the National Network of Economic Think Tanks, that we stand ready to support economic policy, policy makers, and of course, very soon when the new government setup comes into power. I think in the coming days, we would be reaching out to the partners who are here online, and of course to all others, all other network partners, on a couple of things. First one being, of course, the priority, which is to keep the IMF program on track, given that there are a lot of reforms and structural reform objectives which are linked to keeping the IMF, the fund program, and the promises under the fund program on track. Second, of course, once we have a new government which has the mandate to give medium-term economic policies, then of course the network partners would be coming together to really frame a medium-term economic development agenda. We are very encouraged to see that Planning Commission has already initiated an effort for 5-year development program, and so have 2 of the provinces. So this is where network partners would continue to contribute their energies. I think Wajid Saab pointed towards a very important point, that while of course the network partners would continue to give their advice, but the capacity to implement the reform, to follow through, is extremely important. And this is why I think us as partners should stand ready to support in terms of our HR, in terms of our strategic advice. We should stand ready to support some of the key areas of reform which the government has agreed with the fund, and these include the energy sector, the reform of state-owned enterprises, tax policy, rationalizing government expenditure, so on and so forth. We are also seeing that rampant inflation has led to social and welfare negative impacts. And this is again where innovative advice from the network partners is required on how should one mitigate the impact of inflation on the poorest of the poor. And of course, this advice should be sort of relevant to, or should be in the domain of innovative social protection policies, of course, keeping in view the fiscal crunch. Then, of course, regional trade in food and agriculture is being sort of tipped as a solution to sort of mitigate seasonal inflation. And I'm sure there'd be other innovative solutions as well to reduce the burden on the poorest of the poor. We are also noticing now that the new Commerce Minister has given a very ambitious target to his team, both on the side of helping the manufacturing sector exports, as well as the digital sector exports. And I'm happy to see that we benefited today from Dr. Adil Nakhuda's advice as well here. And in the coming days, I think network partners would continue to support Ministry of Commerce, National Tariff Commission, and FBR, so that the exporting sectors are sort of eased, or their cost of doing business can be brought down in some manner. I think it is also important that Ministry of Finance, Central Bank, and almost all the regulators need help with strategic communication. I think a large part of what Ms. Sumaira Abbasi was hinting towards was actually around strategic communications, how we communicate with potential investors, and how we present the opportunities which, for example, a weak Pakistani rupee is currently presenting for the local private sector, manufacturing sector, exporters, freelancers.
the fact that a weaker rupee is making us price competitive in the global market, and how can one take benefit of this? This strategic communication has to come from, of course, the Treasury, the central bank, and others. And certainly network partners can be their ambassadors in putting this strategic communications out there. And finally, I think we have to be partners of this effort under SIFC, a Strategic Investment Facilitation Council, in which we note that the 4 sectors, including mining sector, now is gaining a lot of traction from foreign investors, and Prime Minister's on the sidelines of his US engagements has recently met the private sector in mining, who are very much willing to open up new avenues in Pakistan. So all in all, I think there's a forward-looking agenda waiting for all network members. And I really look forward to your further advice and look forward to your engagement. And very soon we are hoping that there'll be an in-person meeting as well, in which we'll be inviting you to STPI. Thank you, and over to you, Abdullah.
Thank you. And I'm very thankful to the esteemed panelists who had joined us. We shall be reaching out to you with a short policy brief that we'll be extracting from this meeting for your kind perusal and reference. Thank you very much. Allah Hafiz.